We're doing good. No means no. And that's one of those things that a 2-year-old is going to put you to the test over, because that's a word they really don't want to hear. And sometimes we don't want to hear it too. You got a picture up there of a pug, at least I think that's what kind of dog it is. And he's staring down that pie, and he knows it's his pie. I mean, it's right there at eye level. Obviously, it was meant for him. And if it's his pie, why can't he decide when he's going to eat it and how much he's going to eat it? And that tends to be the way we want things. It's mine. I want it my way. I want it my way now. And yesterday, I was doing archery. I was doing good. And all of a sudden, I go to pull back on the string, and the string didn't want to move. And I was getting mad at it because I was doing good. I wanted to continue doing good. This was a team experience. And I was third man on the team, meaning I was doing cleanup. And my bow said no. If I had wanted to, I could have muscled it through and just gone, "Argh!" And the bow would have had something to say about that, because the bow was a little bit messed up. And we didn't figure that out for about 20 minutes. And when I did figure that out with my coach, I was thankful I didn't muscle it through, because if I had muscled it through, there's a good chance that a part of that bow would have smacked me in the forehead or taken out my eye, because I hadn't listened to the bow when the bow said no. Sometimes we need to pay attention even when it's not the answer we want. And if we look at Numbers chapter 20, starting with verse 2, it says, "Now there was no water for the congregation. So they gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, 'If only we died when our brethren died before the Lord.'" And that's not such a positive statement. Because, all right, we're in Numbers chapter 20, but back in chapter 13, that's when they were told, okay, you need to go cross over and take the promised land. And the people said no. And God said, okay, then you don't go, and you spend the next number of years wandering in the wilderness. Well, some of them decided, we were wrong. Yep, we should never have told you no, God. So even though you've told us now, no, don't go in, we're going to go in. And Moses told them, God's not going with you. You going by yourselves, you're going to get destroyed. Oh, no. God had initially said, and even though he says no now, he doesn't really mean it. So they attempt to go across and they get their tails whipped. And a lot of people died, because they didn't listen when God said no. And then in Numbers chapter 16, again, some of the people got a little bit too uppity. Hey, who made you the all-important authority, Moses? We're all priests. We can do the priest thing anytime, any way we want. We're just as good as you. And Moses is like, you guys don't know what you're saying. And that's the time that he says, okay, if these people go on and live to a ripe old age, fine, let them be the way they're saying they're going to be. If something strange and mysterious happens, like the ground opens up, fire comes out and consumes them, well, then you know that when God said, no, this is my way, not your way, God's right. So the people there saying they wished they were alike were the people that weren't listening to God to begin with. And in a sense, they are still acting like that. People that weren't paying attention to God to begin with. So they're getting mad because they're not getting what they expect to get. Then in verse 7 and 8, it says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. Essentially, show them the power of God. I'm still the one that's in charge here. I'm the one that told them, don't go or you die. And they died. I'm the one that told them how the worship of myself was going to go on. They decided they could do it their way, and we showed them what was going to happen. Okay, to show them I'm still God, I'm still in charge, I'm still the one with the power, you go talk to the rock. But as we find out in verse 10, there's a little bit of a problem. And the problem was Moses' attitude. He didn't take kindly to being argued with, being told off again and again and again by all the people of Israel almost. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels." God didn't tell them, call out the rebels. "Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Who's the we, Moses? Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice. Not once, because he had to get the rock's attention, I guess. Attention, rock? Okay, now that we got attention, give me the water. And water came out abundantly in the congregation, and their animals drank. Moses didn't do what God told him to do. That was what group one had a problem with, not doing what God told him to do. And then Moses does the next worst thing, takes it on himself to do it his way instead of God's way, which was the problem with the second group. They were going to do God worship their way instead of God's way. So then in verse 12 we have, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Because you did not believe me," notice it's Moses and Aaron, "to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." Who is there with Moses when Moses is saying we? Aaron. Who's there with Moses when Moses is smacking the rock instead of talking to it? Aaron. It's not just Moses who knew better. It was also Aaron. Even though Aaron wasn't the guy with the rod, Aaron was the guy there with Moses. Aaron knew better and ends up bearing the same responsibility. And sometimes we don't think about the Aaron's part. But you know what? There's another group of people I just left out. All the people of Israel. Because what did they all hear? We're going to bring forth the water. He didn't give God the glory. He didn't acknowledge that it was God that was giving them the water. When God says no, when God says do it my way, we need to know what God's words mean. No means no. Obedience means there's a right way and there's every other way. And every other way isn't necessarily going to be that right way. Worldly wisdom asks, where's God's grace and mercy in a system where yes and no are the only acceptables? I mean, come on, where's the compassion? Can't we see the gray areas? Can't we be more loving and accepting and understanding that maybe somebody else sees it differently? We got a whole lot of that in the world today. But godly wisdom says grace and mercy are found in teaching the truth. No means no for playing near traffic with electricity, poisons, and so many other dangers. Because when the kid runs out into traffic chasing the ball and ignoring the no, dead is dead. And it doesn't matter that you really meant no that time. No means no needs to be a constant. We need to understand, in training up a child, what do we want when the kid goes for the bleach under the counter? When we say no, does that mean it's okay to put your mouth around the lip of the thing even though the lid's still on it? Because everybody here knows, at least when I'm the one that's been pouring it, the bleach doesn't just neatly come out of the bottle. It goes running down the side, and when that kid's lip hits the bleach, it's going to be an ugly situation. We understand the dangers that worldly permissiveness brings, because a lot of times it brings death. And sometimes if it's a gun that wasn't stored properly, it's an instantaneous, there's no run to the hospital, because it ended right then and there. A child might get mad hearing no because it doesn't want or know better. Child wants what the child wants. Parents have a responsibility to know better. The wise understand that sometimes no is in their best interest, in spite of how they might feel in the moment. In Matthew 18:2 it says, "Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." But then he qualifies what that conversion, what that becoming was about. Therefore, whoever humbles himself relative to God, as we brought up in class this morning, yields to God's authority. As this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. Receives. If you receive a child, you're saying you're taking responsibility. What kind of responsibility does it need to be? It's already told to us. One who is responsible in that they have humbled themselves before God and are receiving that child as one who is humble before God, who is yielding their will to God's will. Why? Because we understand God knows a whole lot more about everything than we do. And while God's will may not be the fun of the moment, it's the one that lasts and is the one that ultimately will produce the best results for us. In Ephesians 5:1 it says, "Therefore be imitators of God as dear children." Meaning, what's a child do? What they see the parent do. And a long time ago we had that commercial that was on TV. And you see dad do something. And the son there is watching, looks up, dad does it, the kid does it. Dad's in there shaving. Dad puts on the shaving lotion. Kid puts on the shaving lotion, then takes his finger and does the whole shave job while dad's shaving his face. Sitting under the tree, dad pulls out the pack of cigarettes, lights up, puts down the pack of cigarettes. And the message was, hey, Think about what you're doing. Somebody's watching and imitating. The message we need to get from Ephesians here is, hey, God has been showing. We need to be watching and, like a child, imitating in trust and in love. Because the truth of the message of that TV commercial was, why was the kid imitating dad? Not because dad was saying, thou shalt. Kid loved dad, wanted to be like dad. If we love God, what should we want to be like? 1 Corinthians 11:1. Imitate me just as I also imitate Christ. I'll give you a hint. Paul isn't saying, I'm authoritating at you, and the authority I'm following is. He's saying, you and I both know who paid it all. I'm doing my best to follow that example. You want somebody that you can see? Follow me because I'm following him. Obey and follow the example. Matthew 26:39. He went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. And the answer was no. We don't find an awful lot of examples in Scripture where there's a prayer and we see the answer is no. We see a lot of times when they're in desperate straits and they pray and God provides the answer they need desperately. In saying no, God provided the answer that was desperately needed. It was not just desperately needed by us. Learned he obedience through the things he suffered. Jesus learned obedience and took it all the way to the cross. That's a heavy burden to learn. Genesis 22:12. And he said, do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Do we fear God enough to accept no and to obey? We understand the consequence that when we don't accept God's truth, there's eternal consequence. Just like we can understand it when it's a child and they don't obey because they're too busy playing, they're too busy being full of themselves, too busy, and they're on a whole lot of happy. Sorry. No means no. Obedience can be life-saving. It is in Christ. Each of us has the choice to choose to take him on in baptism. Each of us has the choice to listen and obey daily. And sometimes listening means hearing the answer is no, but I want to pull it back really hard, Lord. No. You want that boat to survive? You want you to survive. You accept the no in spite of. Why? Because accepting the no is a whole lot better than the consequences that come from not accepting God's guidance. If you need to take on Christ in baptism or you need the prayers of the church, you're welcome to come as we stand and sing.